if you have the program Final Cut 7 installed in your system, most likely you also have Motion 4 installed. Select on the Motion 4 icon. You will get this window which says Welcome to Motion. You'll have 4 options: View, Quick Tours, Begin with Tutorial, Start with a Template. At this point in time, since these programs, and when I say these programs, I'm speaking about the programs related to Final Cut 7, just as Final Cut 7 ceased to exist and ceased to be supported by Apple a couple of years ago, if you were to select on Begin with Online Tutorial, what you will get is the Motion 5 tutorial, because that is the up-to-date application. Motion 4 theoretically does not exist anymore, just as Final Cut 7 does not exist anymore. And again, it started existing and supported a couple of years ago. But if you still have Final Cut 7 for this right now, and you are still working in that program, Motion 4 is what you have installed, and that's what this tutorial will be about. So I just want to let you know about the online tutorial, because it'll be confusing if you select on there and you get the Motion 5 tutorial from Apple. So that is really not an option for you to use. What we will use is the bottom option, which is Start with a New Project. Right here it's already selected. I'll click on Continue. And this is very important here, because this window shows us what our preset is. Now, it's very important for you to have a preset that matches exactly or as closely as possible to your project. So in Final Cut 7, if you're working on a standard definition project that meets these parameters here, 720 by 486, and this is the resolution of it, that's what you want to utilize. If it's not, select where it says NTSC Broadcast SD, and then utilize the one that you're using in Final Cut Pro 7. So if you happen to be working with a Firewire deck, if you're still using tape, you will select on NTSC DV. Most likely this is the one that will be the most helpful to you in Final Cut 7, and you will not have to render when you bring it into Final Cut 7. Again, because Final Cut 7 is not a 64-bit program, you will have to render when you bring in items that do not match the sequence or your project. So this is the best way to go if you're still doing that. If you're working with high definition footage, then you will work on Broadcast HD 720 if that's what you're working with, or 1080i 60 or 30 if that's what you're working with. So again, it depends on what it is that you're using for your project and what your sequence is set up at. And here, down here, we have Broadcast HD 1080i 60. But for our argument's sake, we're going to select NTSC DV. Click on OK. And Motion will launch. Now the way this program works is you select an item, and then you will select to make a movement or apply a filter to that item. Now, a movement here is called a behavior. So think of it as a kid or a pet, where you tell it what to do, when to do it, how long to do it for, and so on and so forth. I don't know if that's a good way of thinking of it, but you can go ahead and knock yourself out and select any which way you want to think about this process. But essentially, you have something where you tell it what to do, when to do it, and for how long to do it for. So for example, if I select on the letter T on the very top here, and I'll select this toolbar. So up here on the upper left hand side of our canvas, we have several buttons. We have the selection button. Over here they call it transform as well. So select transform tool. We have another select transform tool, but this is when you're doing a three-dimensional, which we'll go over later on in another tutorial. So it's adjust 3D. A hand tool, they call it a pan tool. This is so you can select and move things around in the canvas. You have the zoom and you have your walking camera, you'll have your rectangle tool, and you'll have your Bezier tool, which allows you to make a mask, and we'll go over into what a mask is. You also have two masking tools on the right hand side, which I'll grayed out right now. And then you have a pen tool or paint stroke tool, and of course the text tool. Right now I'm going to select the text tool, and I'm going to select inside my canvas. Now by default, the heads-up display, which is this window here, it's a floating window, and that window will give you the very basic parameters of whatever it is you selected. So in my case, I selected text. So you will see here, and I'll move this over the canvas, it says text, and it is semi-transparent. So depending on where you move this window to, you may or may not see much of it. So I put it over the black area so you can clearly see the window. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and select the text, and it's already selected. You'll see the cursor appear here, and I'll select to type in a text. Once you select the text and you have typed the text, go ahead and press the escape key on your keyboard. This will show you the ability to move this around, and it will give you this borderline here, making you able to move it around once again. So if I select on it and move it around, you can go ahead and manipulate it in any manner that you want. So I put it right in the center, and you'll see these guides appear, which are there by default as well. One thing to explain here is that right now this project is a 2D project, meaning it's two-dimensional. If you wish to make it a 3D project, you will have to add a camera. Right now I'm just going to stay with a two-dimensional project. And one of the things that you may notice here is on the right hand side of this text, you'll see these 3 circles. So if I move my cursor over a circle, you see a virtual circle appear, and this will allow me to select a different axis to move my text. If I select on the left hand side, I see a green circle appear, and that means another axis of rotation. And if I go to the right hand side, I see another circle, which gives me another axis of rotation. Now what is an axis? Axis is a line or virtual line where a camera or an item will move around or twist around or dangle on, whichever word you want to use. It go ahead and pivots on that point. So if I select on this here, you will see that the text will pivot up and down. If I select on this here, you'll see it pivots on this axis, so it goes side to side. And if I select on this axis, it goes ahead and rotates on that, so that goes up and down on its side. So those are different ways of you being able to rotate your selection. It's on the left hand side because if I look at my heads-up display, I'll bring up my heads-up display here, you'll see on this location here, and I'll zoom into this, where it says alignment, you see it says left. If I select on there and put center, you'll see that now the 3 circles are in the center of my text, and of course I have to move my text in order to do that. So if I go ahead and zoom out of this, I'll move this out of the way. Once again, select on the circles. Now you'll see that the manipulation is on the center of the new axis, or new alignment I should say. So now you'll see that when I rotate this, it's rotating in its center rather than the left hand side as it did before. And same thing here. It rotates on the center rather than the left hand side. So the alignment is very important when you are trying to make an effect in motion. So always pay attention to what your alignment is of your object. So right now, if I were to play this, I'll go ahead and play this. Okay, nothing's happening. So now that I mentioned that, on the bottom of this canvas, we will see that we have these buttons appear. So we have a record button. We have the go to start project, go to end project. We have a play button. You have a play from start button. You have a loop playback button. You have a previous frame and go to next frame button. And then you have a play mute audio button. Those are the buttons we have on our on the bottom of our canvas. So you can always select the play button if you want to play your clip. When you do that, you may notice the playhead is just above this mini timeline. This is what this is called. You'll see a blue bar, and this goes by whatever you have selected. So if I go to the left hand side of this, you will see it says sample text. That is the name of this layer that we have selected. Layers is what this program is about. So when you're in Final Cut 7, you have tracks and clips that are inside those tracks. In here, we have layers, and we have items that are inside each layer. Now the way you see the layers here is by selecting the F5 key. If you select the F5 key and nothing happens or something else happens, go ahead and go and change your keyboard layout in your system settings to make all the functions the default functions in the OS. So if I press F5, you will see your layers appear here on the left hand side, and you'll see that it says group and then sample text. A group is a compilation of layers, and then a layer is just a layer by itself, which would be just the text or the video or whatever it is that you have brought into the program or created in the program. So I have a selection of my text. You'll see the text is selected, and I'm going to go ahead and press play once again. You'll see that nothing happens. I'll go back to the beginning of my project. I can also press the home key on my keyboard for my playhead to go to the beginning of my project. Now, I mentioned that behaviors are what make the clip do something. So in our inspector or file browser on the far left hand side of motion, you will see a window here. I'm gonna go ahead and zoom into that so you can see for yourself. On the left hand side, it says file browser on the top left hand side. Then underneath that, it says file browser, library, and then inspector. Those are the three tabs that you see in motion by default. File browser will allow me to select on a drive or several drives. So there, if you have a particular drive that you want to work from and you want to get your media from, that's where you select it, and then you will see the folders appear or a media that you have available to bring into your project. The library will show you all of the items that you have available for your program. So I'm going to zoom into that. And when I zoom into the library tab, you will see that I have several items available to me. It says behaviors, filters, image units, generators, image units again, particle emitters, replicators, shapes, gradients, fonts, live fonts, text styles, shape styles, music, photos, content, and favorites. Now, of course, I can't possibly go every single thing here because we will be here for quite some time. But I want to show you right now just the behavior so you can get a general idea of what they will do for your text or anything else that you bring into your program. So behaviors are, once again, something to make your item, your selection, do something. So for example, if I select on basic motion, the basic motion folder, and I were to select on fade in, fade out, on the upper left hand side you'll see what it does. So it gives you a preview of that. To the right of that, it says the name of it, says fade in, fade out, and then it gives you a brief description. Dissolves an object in and out. So if I were to take this item and I were to drag it either to my layer or drag it to the text, that will put a behavior on that. Now you'll see that my title has gone away. The reason for that is because it's a fade in, fade out. So at the very first frame, this particular title is faded out. Theoretically, it should fade in over time. If I look at my heads-up display, and I'll go ahead and move that here, you will see here that it says, and I'll zoom into this, it says sample text fade in, fade out, and then you'll see here it says 20 frames and then 20 frames. These 20 frames represent the beginning of the clip, and these last 20 frames are the ending of the clip. Now you see a line here, and then you see this triangle. This represents the amount of time. So if I select on here and drag this, so by left clicking and dragging, you'll notice that the numbers are changing and I'm making this longer or shorter. So if I don't want it to be 20 frames in length and I want it to last a full second, that means that the fade up of my title will last 30 frames or a full second if I'm working at 30 frames per second. This is the amount of time that it will take for this clip to fade up. Same thing at the end. If I move this here, now that's 30 frames as well. So it's going to take over 30 frames to fade up, and towards the end of the clip it will take 30 frames to fade out. So if I were to select on my timeline and I go to the play button and select on play, you'll see that it fades up. Because this is 10 seconds in length, the title will remain there for the 9 seconds and then it will fade out. And there it is. And then it fades back up because looping is turned on, so it will keep looping around, so fade in and fade out all the time. If this behavior is something you do not want, select on the layers, select on the behavior, not the layer, because then you'll get rid of the layer. Select on the behavior and press the delete key, and that will get rid of your behavior. Now if I were to press play, you'll see that my title does absolutely nothing. I'll press the start key or the home key to make sure that my playhead goes to the beginning of my project, and I'll select another item. So here I'm going to select perhaps on throw. So here's a throw behavior. So we're still on the behaviors, basic motion, and then down here shows me the content of these folders, which of course, again, here says throw on the very bottom left hand side. Once again, on our preview on the upper left hand side in the library, it says throw, that's the name of the behavior, and then it says applies a single force to push an object in a specific direction. So if I were to take this throw behavior and put it again to my layer, inside the layer, or I drag it to the text, you will see that my heads-up display shows a circle, and I will see absolutely nothing inside that circle. Also, if I were to press play, nothing happens. The text is just sitting there. it's not moving. That's because I have not told the behavior what kind of behavior I want to do. In this case, you need a direction. I have not given it a direction yet. What you do is you select on your heads-up display. In this circle, select this center point. You'll see a crosshair appear there. Go ahead and select on that and then drag it. In the canvas, you should see a line appear as well, representing the movement that you're giving the object. So I'll click on there and let go. If I were to press play now, you will see that my sample text is moving along that line that I gave it. That's the behavior. So it's a throw behavior. I'm throwing it from the center of my canvas to the upper right hand corner of the canvas. So that's a throw behavior. Once again, if I want to get rid of that, I'll select on the throw behavior in my layers, press the delete key, and I will get rid of the behavior. There are many behaviors available to you here and simulations and so on and so forth. Some of them are specific. So for example, text animation and text sequence are specific for just text. So keep that in mind when you're doing that. So these are the basics of motion when it comes to a single object. Because of the length that I will have to make the tutorial to cover this program, I have to limit myself on the amount of information I can give on each tutorial. So this will be the end of this tutorial, and I'll begin another tutorial which will be let's say part 2 and then part 3 and so on and so forth, so I can go over each particular item as we go along. Thanks for visiting Making the Reel.